Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It is episode number 284 of the Mail Right Show. We're here with once again, third time in a row, we're here with Christopher Anuszewski, and we're super excited to have him back. The reason that we're excited to have him back is obviously Jonathan and I get really just so thrilled when we get to talk to somebody who has actually boots on the ground experience with all the operational sides of lead generation. How do you manage leads? Not just how do you generate them, which we talk about a lot, but what do you do once the lead is actually generated? And Christopher has a tremendous amount of experience. As a matter of fact, we could probably do another 5 shows and we wouldn't even begin to cover all the things that he and I have talked about, like offline, not on the air. So we're just tremendously excited. And today, we're going to talk about a topic that should be incredibly important to you. It may or may not be, but it should be. I'm telling you right up front. And that is the importance of owning and controlling your own data. Okay. That is the topic of today's show. And Chris is going to help us out with his thoughts on that. But without any further ado, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience once again?
Jonathan, Robert, thank you guys for having me on once again. My name is Chris Anuszewski. I run a team out of the Orlando area called Homes of Central Florida Group, or Homes of CFL. And, I have some pretty good experience as an operations VP in not only real estate, but in prior different industries, but all dealing with leads and dealing with management and things like that and different systems. I come from a tech background, so I have a passion for tech and for leveraging technology in our day-to-day business to automate and make our lives easier and smoother and better. So that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Beautiful. And ladies and gentlemen, it is always my honor to share the virtual stage with my co-host, Jonathan Denwood. He is a swell fellow. He is a former boxer. He is a current WordPress developer. And he has got some really deep chops. And most importantly, in my humble opinion, he's got the desire to actually be of service to the audience that he's trying to create things for. In this current moment, what he is creating is a lead generation system for agents who are either part-time or in the early stages of their career and building up a lead generation system. And if that happens to be you, I strongly suggest that you look up Jonathan on the MailRight site and potentially schedule a free consultation with him. I've had the privilege of hearing a few of these consultations, and it's just about being helpful to you. So with no further ado, Jonathan, why don't you go ahead and finish off?
There's not much. You've done a better job than me, so there's not much more to say. If you're interested, folks, we love you to come on board. If you're in your first to third year as a real estate agent, I think our platform is targeted for you. And we get you up to the stage where you could hire Robert and his team, and we can pass you on to his great website and that. But we're there when you're into your first and third year. Back over to you, Robert.
Lovely. So the way that we decided on today's show topic, gentlemen, and I may not have remembered what the topic was, but I remember how we decided that we're gonna get here. We were talking about the other day. We were talking about CRMs, and as an aside, Christopher said, "Hey, you know what? When we were trying to move data for a large team from one system to another, we ran up against some challenges in the exporting and moving of said data. And so we immediately realized there's a whole show in the concept of owning your data. What do you do with your data? Who allows you to control your data? What would Christopher's recommendations be about staying in control of your data, and how would you do that?" So Chris, I'm going to serve it up to you, but I'm going to say the first thing that I would like a detailed description for our audience of the challenge that you ran through. Feel free to, I mean, if you don't feel like it, don't mention the names of the vendors, but I'm going to warn you, I may come in behind you and mention them. That way, if anybody's going to get in trouble, it's going to be me. But I want people to realize what some of the pros and cons. I'm not bashing anybody, but there are definitely pros and cons to big systems and the way that they manage data. And I just want people to understand it. It's not a matter of it's bad. These big companies have reasons why they make it hard for you to export data, but you as the business owner should understand who these companies are and what the challenge is. So with no further ado, over to you, man.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting topic because I think a lot of people tend to gloss over it, right? You don't really think about it. You're just trying to find what's a good place, good system that can manage my leads for me, right? So I have a place for myself, for my agents to go in, follow up with leads, track the phone calls, all that stuff. Well, a lot of us, we're not reading those 47-page long terms of service, agreements. I admit I don't do that. I don't think many of us do. And, one of the pitfalls of that is, and when you tend to realize it is then when you go to move your data out, you say, I've outgrown this system. This other system over here is better. It does more catered things to what I need it to do. All right, I'm going to pick up my leads that I've paid thousands, and depending on how long you've been in the business, could be millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars for these leads. And I'm going to move them over here. Well, when you go to do that, then you quickly realize what, you didn't look at in the beginning, which is what is their exportability? What are they willing to allow you to take out of their system and with you, which in your mind or my mind, if I've paid thousands of dollars for these leads, the system didn't do that. I paid actually more of my own money to house my leads into this system. And now they restrict you from what you can export out. And, at the last team I was with, it came a big realization when we tried to do that with one of the largest providers in the game. And, I'm not throwing anybody in the bus. We're just here talking open and transparent. It was Boomtown, and we went to go export out of Boomtown to try to move to another CRM. And lo and behold, we find out it only exports some of the data. And you go online and there's got to be a way around this. Well, there is, but it's difficult and you have to go real round about it. And a big player in the game, we reached out to him for help. And he told us, he said, yeah, they're not going to let your data go easily. He's like, you have to be tricky, but don't feel bad about it because they're kind of been tricky with you on whether or not you should be able to export your data. Again, you spent thousands of dollars on these leads. You spent hundreds of thousands of man hours inputting the data, the notes, the phone calls, the text messages, your agents, you've trained them up to do this and they've done a great job, but now it's all left behind. Right. So, we had to get tricky with that. And I don't know if you want me to go into that, but we can. Yeah, that's one of the big things,
Well, I got to jump in. I'm going to cut you off. Listen, man, I got to jump in because my first question, and yes, I probably do want you to get into it because I really want the show to be of help to anybody that might be facing the same problem. So we know we're talking about Boomtown. We know they're a huge provider. Chris is actually being pretty nice. If you're a single agent, you're spending no less than 20 or 30,000 with them. If you're a team, you are most likely spending hundreds of thousands. If you're a team, most likely. And so,
I just want to quickly add, it doesn't apply. It also applies to when you're starting out, when you're offered that free CRM from your broker. And I'm not throwing them under the bus. One that's become very aggressive is KV Core. And they become very aggressive about offering it to brokers, and those brokers can offer it at a special rate to their agents. But there's the problem: who owns the data? If you leave that agency, you've normally signed an agreement that because you've used the broker's supplied CRM, which is KV Core, that they own that data. You don't own that data as the agent, even though you put it all in and you got all those leads. It's actually owned by the brokerage. I just thought I wanted to add that. Robert.
Well,
And I have
that
some
is
stuff
true.
to add on to that too later.
Holy cow, guys. But we're going to get back to that. That is true. If you're a team member, your broker owns your data. But here's the question that I've got for you is that I want to know what the data fields were that you were hoping to export that you realized instantaneously. Because if I'm not mistaken, Boomtown does give you a basic export ability. But a guy like you said, there was a whole bunch of data points that you looked at and you said, holy shit, I can't get my data points. What was it that first raised the red flag that you were looking at in terms of data that you couldn't export without doing this trick, which we'll talk about?
So, they give us the basic data. You say, okay, I want their name, I want their phone number, I want their contact details, their email, stuff like that. Okay, great. All right. Well, that's all good and well. And that's the kind of the basic structure of a lead, right? But then all of the hours that you've worked to add in notes, none of that stuff comes with it. You don't get their, I don't know, it depends on where you go, activity, timeline, any of those data, you get none of that, none of the phone calls you've made. So it's as if when you go to this new CRM, whatever it may be, you're starting scratch from day one with this lead. You don't know if this was an active hot lead that's ready to go in the next 90 days and you just talked to them yesterday, or is this a lead that you haven't talked to in 4 months and now it's time for you to follow up with them and they were cold? And, any of those points, did you have follow-up appointments scheduled? Too bad. It's not going to show up on your new calendar because it doesn't come with it. So all of the things that go along the accessory data, I guess, if you will, is really the important part of the data in a CRM, and you don't get any of that stuff. And the point I was going to add is what John had said a minute ago, pointing out KV Core. I did some testing now with my current, because with EXP, they offer you KV Core, and I briefly tested it out and used it. I tested doing an export there. And one of their things is when you go to export, I'll read it to you. It says timeline activity will not be included in this export. So all of those data points that you've added and spent your time adding, you don't get. So,
which is pretty incredible. So what you figured out a workaround for Boomtown. What was the workaround?
So the workaround with Boomtown, and I don't know if this will work with anybody else. I just got it because a lot of people switch from Boomtown to Follow Boss, which is what ultimately where I got the answer from was the Follow Boss experts was you have to reach out to support as the admin or the owner of the account. Mm-hmm. And you have to say, hey, we're doing some external data analysis. And we happen to have a data analyst on our team. Not a lot of teams have that, but we happen to pay for one. And it was very helpful. But hey, he is doing some data analysis and we need access to be able to import these into a dashboard that he's building, right? Mm-hmm. And we can't do that unless we export. We have to have all these data points. And they say, oh, okay, great. Never say that you're leaving the CRM and that's going to lock you down. They're going to know the jig is up. But that's how we got around it was you have to say you want a deep export. It's a deep export, right? Mm-hmm. Gives you all that, because all that data is in there. It's in their databases, right? And then we just had to kind of play a little cat and mouse game of, oh yeah, we're doing a data analysis through a separate system, and we can't. It doesn't connect with Boomtown because Boomtown's locked off. And we need to be able to do that in there. The dashboards you guys have just aren't good enough for what we need. We need to really get drilled down. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll have our support team prep that for you, and that's what did it. That's what got it done. Now, how successful, if you're looking to leave, I would say, and you're listening to this podcast, you better be one of the first ones, because once they get a load of these requests, they're going to go, something's up.
I totally agree though. And I think that the reason that we're doing the show, because this has always been, I have 3 blog posts on my website that rarely get read, guys, but I've done a deep dive into this 3 separate times, because when you sign up with Boomtown or one of these other services, there is a subsection of the line, like in their Yulias, in all of them, not just Boomtown, by the way, KV Core, Boomtown. And what that line kind of says is effectively that anything you enter into our platform is actually owned by us. Now, the language is a little bit more legal and it's a little more murky than that. But if you're going to sit here and say, and I think that a lot of our listeners are probably thinking to themselves, but I own the information. How can they do that? Because I would be saying that. I did that when I realized that this was a problem. And the thing is that, yeah, you might own the data, but guess what? They own the platform. And all you're doing is entering something into their platform. They legally have the right to do whatever the hell they want with it, which is a problem if you think about it. And this is one of those prime cases where that Yulia comes up, because if you press them, if everybody listens to the show and calls them in at once and they start to push back, ultimately they can just tell you to go take a long walk on a short pier and smell you later. There's nothing you can do about it. You have no recourse. So no court, no legal case, no threats. It does not matter. You signed a contract that said that you understood that it was their platform.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to
I think we just to interrupt, we need to go for our break, Robert, and then come back. We can continue the discussion.
We'll hear Chris's response. Sorry. Okay, so thank you for listening, everybody. We're going to go to our break and we're going to come back and we're going to hear Chris's response. I'm going to actually wait, John. I'm going to break the format knowingly and say, let's do the how do you get in touch with everybody at the end of the show, okay? With that, we'll see you in a minute.
We're just going for our halfway break. We still got another. We're not finishing the podcast here.
No, I know. All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's episode number 284. God, can you believe that? Anyway, we're still here with Christopher, and we're talking about the importance of owning your data. He gave us a great tip in the first section of the show where he was talking about how he managed to get his data, all of his data, including his notes, out of Boomtown and import them into Follow Up Boss. And he was in the midst of asking a question. We had to go back to the break. So Chris, why don't you tee up your answer here?
Yeah. So, in response to what you were saying a second ago about, they own all your data. When you go in there, you're signing their terms of service and the user agreements and saying, yep, I'm using your platform. You could do whatever you can or will or want with my data that I'm entering in there. This is obviously a bigger discussion, but it just kind of goes to Facebook, right? It's like, hey, we're all signing on using social media platforms. We're giving away our data for free. And we're literally saying, yep, we're going to sign on the dotted line. You can market to us. You could do what you want. So, it's common practice nowadays. So it shouldn't be a surprise, but it is something that you should be cognizant of when you are going into these platforms. And it goes back to the last show that we did together talking about CRMs in my mind, which is truly before you commit your heart and soul and money and data to one platform, make sure you've done your research that it's the one that's going to serve you, not right now, not in 6 months from now, but in years from now, or at least a year from now, a long-term goal of, am I going to outgrow this? Because if you do outgrow it, you will be starting from scratch with the new CRM. And that is not fun. I can tell you, when you've got under 100 leads, okay. When you've got 5,000 leads in your database and you have no notes or activity to go along with them, that could be very debilitating.
So what might I ask, obviously, because you've had this experience, so you've moved to Follow Up Boss. So what is their position and what's the difference between Follow Up Boss's position and Boomtown's position on this?
So they're actually part of the reason why I went with them is that, number one, when you go in here and you want to export your data in Follow Up Boss, there's literally an option that says export all columns and data. And it will let you take everything. So your notes, your last call, all of that stuff. Depending on how big your database, it could be a massive load, but they let you take all of that with you, which is great, and they're so open. They're one of the most open CRMs in terms of connectivity to third-party systems. So, you may even be able to have like a Zap from Zapier that can zap your data out of there. I don't know, I haven't done it, but I'm assuming that you can, because I know we've interacted with other third-party systems before. So that's something else to be cognizant of, is you may not even have to do a manual export. You can just kind of zap the data out if you need to.
So for everybody who's listening to this show, one of the reasons that this question about data, so I've talked to a lot of teams, and you both know that. And some teams don't care about this issue. And it's funny because the teams that I find that don't care about this issue tend to be churn and burn kind of teams. They're not really looking at the overall long-term value of the data in the first place. Like, if you're going to say, do I have a post-sale process? And John, this is one of the reasons that I got super excited to have Chris on the show. We were talking from a sales prospect conversation to start with. He was looking at us along with many other people in his research process. But when we were talking about post-sale process, I was just incredibly impressed, because the way that Chris had built up his personal business was that not only did he have a process for nurturing a lead, he has a process in place to nurture people that he sold homes to. And from his perspective at that time, the way he was expressing it to me, it felt like that was more important to him, or just as important to him as any other part of all of his processes. So he sells them something, and now these people go into another like custom crafted email nurturing thing where he's staying in touch with that person so he can stay in front of them. And his sphere of influence business has been growing tremendously. So he takes a piece of information from someplace else that he bought, basically, but then he owns it because he nurtures them and stays in touch with them and has conversations and builds value into the relationship. And he does all of that after the sale occurs. If this was a thing that you wanted to do, all of a sudden, I think owning your information and controlling your information would be much more important to you. Yeah. What do you think, John?
Well, but then then we're going to put this problem, and I do think you've got to be aware of it. As long as you're aware of what you're getting involved, it's fine if you're not too fussy about this. But then we can put this on a much bigger, on steroids, because let's throw in the website now. Let's throw in a website that you're spending a lot of time putting content on it and SEO and making it searchable and doing all the things that we've talked about for the past 18 months, Robert. And then you want to move away from that particular company because you're no longer happy with what you're getting, and you can't export any of these posts, any of this content, and you've just got a website that you spent a fair bit of money on, and you just got to manually transfer all the content. And depending on the size of the website, that can be quite a thing to do, can't it, Robert?
It really could be. And I think that there's a lot of people that are, I'm going to guess. And Chris, what would you say? I want to hear your thoughts, but I'm thinking there's a tremendous amount of very smart agents and brokers who understand full well that they signed up with a platform, that they gave up the rights to their information. And if they're not moving around, if they're not looking at the problem closely, I think it's because they're thinking that it's a huge hassle to do it. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. It definitely creates a huge barrier, right? A barrier to exit or a barrier to entry into another maybe better system or a system that's better suited for them. I mean, goodness, that was the exact thing that plagued our last team that I was a part of. And it was, okay, how are we going to do this? If we do this, these are all the things that are affected. One of the biggest things was, okay, we're a part of the Boomtown ecosystem, which they have built-in IDX searches already set up for each lead. So now when we go, we're going to have to manually set up, even if we export all of our data. So cool, we did the super secret trick and we've got all of our data. But now we have 50,000 leads in our database that don't have home searches set up. And now we have to manually go do that. Well, thankfully, the system that we moved to, they have a way to make that happen. But, that may not always be the case. So it creates this huge barrier of someone going, oh my goodness, that was a big stopping point for us. We had to stop and really think, okay, should we do this? Is it going to cost us more time and effort and hours than we're willing to give up just to move to something that maybe is better? We don't know. Is the grass just greener, sort of situation. But yeah, I can 100% see that's the big thing that stops a lot of teams or agents moving, because to restart back up, to create those searches, which initially took a few seconds, but you multiply that out by, even if it takes 2 minutes, you got 50,000 leads in your database. Well, good Lord, you're going to be setting up home searches for here to the next year.
Right. What's this? Okay. Actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you what the solution was that you moved to. We're hoping, as usual, that you're going to be willing to stay on and do a little bit of video bonus content with us. Okay. Yeah. And that, I think, would be a good tee up. Would you agree, John?
Yeah, we've got about another 5 minutes, but we can wrap up things and then we can go on to bonus content. Yeah.
And I'd love to also, throw in, if you can't get all of your data, and let's just say you're in the worst case scenario with the CRM and they will not export, you can't do some secret trick, you can't get all of your data, and you're say, I've got to have these points, these data points, how do I get them out? There are solutions out there where you're not manually going in and copying and pasting notes yourself. So we can talk about that in the bonus content too, if you'd like.
So I would like, sorry, go ahead, John.
Well, this problem just, because I've got another business, and this problem is a regular one that I come across in my other business. So it's just not solely affects the real estate industry. My other business, we're involved in training websites. Well, there's a number of SaaS players in that, but they don't provide any manual way of exporting when people signed up, when they didn't. And the actual courses and all the Siri content, they normally don't offer any automated way of exporting all that data. It has to be done either manually, or you find workarounds and you have to code up scripts that will suck out the data and match that field with that field. And normally there are some companies that we work with that have built these scripts for these educational platforms that we regularly get asked, can we move away from this SaaS platform into WordPress? And we've built relationships with a couple of companies that have built these scripts. And it's exactly the same problem as what we're discussing here, Robert.
And that was going to lead me to my wrap up. So, ladies and gentlemen, there isn't an easy answer to this. What we're hoping is that for the small handful of you that have already not made a decision, and most of you have, you're in bed with these guys already. You're in bed with KV Core. You're in bed with Boomtown. You're already staring the challenge in the face. So us sitting here on the show telling you there is a challenge, I don't think that a lot of you are going to be surprised by that. Here's what I'm going to say to those of you listening to the show today. You want to do your best to have a guy like Chris in your relationship bucket. Okay. If he's willing to accept an email from you, send him an email, because this is not an easy to discuss or dialogue, dissect challenge. So as a consultant, I can tell you that guy like Chris, guy like me, we got to have a couple of conversations with you before we can even quote you a price for a service. So this isn't a sales pitch. This is literally hey, maybe he'll do you a favor and send you in the right direction. You got to have a data kind of analyst, as he already said, probably come on board and try to help you move your data. okay, from one place to the next if you're already dealing with the problem. And it could be the solution that Jonathan said, which you have somebody that maybe write a custom script and help you do it. Could be the solution that Chris said earlier, where maybe you have a data, like a specific data person who's dealt with the challenge for your specific platform in the past and has a trick or two up their sleeve to help you get it all moved. The end of the day, though, my advice to those who follow my advice is that if you've moved past the point where you have 10 to 20,000 contacts, at that point, the data has millions and millions of dollars of value. Doesn't matter what market that you're in. It just doesn't. So in gross sales and hundreds of thousands of dollars in commission, which means that spending 5 or 10,000, whatever the number is, to get it moved from one place to the next and control it from there on in, and it's an excellent investment in my opinion. So without any further ado, guys, we're going to wrap up the podcast section of the show. Chris, if you were interested in having somebody reach out to you, how would they do that?
You can reach out to me on my social handles under my team name, which is at, and it says on Instagram, it's on Facebook, at Homes of CFL for Central Florida. So Charlie Foxtrot Lima at Homes of CFL. Or you could always email me at Chris, CHRIS, at homesofcfl.com.
Okay. And for those of you who are listening to the show, listen, I'm going to give you a piece of advice. Please take it. Chris is a brilliant resource, and he's in the beginning stages of opening his own company. Once he gets it up and off the ground, he will not have time to do any of these side requests. I guarantee it, because I own my own company and I know how I got started. Right now, he's probably still in the place where he needs some extra capital to do the stuff that he's doing. And so if you do need some help, maybe there's a good relationship there, but it's not going to be around forever, that opportunity, I guarantee you. So if anybody's interested in that, you should listen to the show and reach out now for him. Jonathan. So I've got my other brilliant co-host who's always helmed this thing. He runs the thing. He does all the outreach. He schedules with the clients. He deals with me for getting the show number. He handles my madness. He's an amazing guy. So Jonathan, if somebody would want to reach out to you, how would they do that?
It's really, really simple. Just go to the MailRight website and the phone number, the email, and you can set up a free demo where I just go through a half hour and I show you the basics of MailRight. And we've been onboarding some new clients recently, and they've just been blown away with what's inside MailRight and the value it offers. So it's really simple. Over to you, Robert.
And of course, my name is Robert Newman. I'm the founder of Inbound Real Estate Marketing, Inbound REM. We are the only company in the US that is doing inbound SEO-based websites that you own. I give a lot of information away on my website. I rarely press it because trust me when I tell you, for people looking for this solution, they find me automatically. Chris, how findable am I on Google?
You're there. you're out there and on YouTube. Big time.
There we go. So if you want to find me, you can probably just research any of the systems that we're talking about. You'll already know who I am. You'll come across me. But if you want to reach out to me, go to inboundrem.com. And with that, gentlemen, we're gonna wrap this up and we're gonna go over to the video.
Awesome.
3, 2, 1. Welcome back. It's episode number 284. We're here with Chris Anuszewski and Jonathan Dinwood. And for those of you who are joining us on video, hello. What did I say we were going to start off with? Sorry.
Good question. I think
it was a question, right?
It was a question. It was a reply from Chris about the website side of it, which is another whole can's worth, isn't it? But I just want to make a remark. You know, everything we've said, there's nothing illegal. It's totally down to you being aware and the contract you signed with a provider. But I just feel I just don't with the MailRight system, because it's based on we provide a effective but basic CRM system, but it's based on WordPress. So basically the export of the data is really quite easy, and it's in very JSON. It's in a JSON format, which any kind of developer should know how to handle.
You're losing all of our audience.
Right. Just take me. You can export the data in a pretty portable format. But just look at Follow Up Boss, their attitude. I personally just don't want to entrap people and just make it, stay with us because they can't export their data. It's not really the business model that I really want to pursue, really, Robert. I want them to stay because they think it's really good value and they're happy with what they're getting from us,
I agree. And I remembered what my question was. I'm sorry, guys, that I forgot it. So, Chris, I did have a question I was serving up in the bonus content. For those of you that are joining us just on YouTube or have stayed with us from the podcast or transferred over. So here's the question that I have. So I'm a broker and I have already understand that I have a big problem, or I'm a new agent moving into being a broker. Okay. What is your best advice for somebody to have like data security, data control? We've touched on it throughout the show, and I know that we've been giving the answer in little teeny tiny segments, but why don't you give somebody the whole package, all this years, all this research? What's the solution? What's your solution? How do you control your data? How do you stay in control of it? How do you do it right now in 2021?
I mean, I'm going to be honest. I don't have the perfect answer because, you employ these platforms, you pay for these platforms so that way you can put your data there and track it all there. So unless the only real way would be if you invest. I think the main thing is making sure you're investing in a system that will let you pull all of your data out right up front. So you get off on the right foot, right? The next thing is going to be, if you maybe are getting in with a system that doesn't allow that, then you need to just have that in mind. Do you keep a separate database, and even then, how do you get the data in and out? The couple solutions that I would say would be workarounds, that I'd mentioned earlier in the podcast would be, okay, you've got thousands and thousands of leads. You're with a system that's going to let you export their name, their email, their address, their phone number. Great. But none of the activity that you've done with them or any of the notes that you've made, how do you manually get those things over? I've known of other teams that have done this. They employ VAs, virtual assistants, right? You can get them for pennies on the dollar. You spend, $500 and you can get a full works week, 40, 50 hours out of them. You're talking anywhere from $2 to $5 an hour. You're not going to find someone in the US to do that. And you're giving them work overseas, right? But they will go in and manually, and I've seen them do this for a couple of things. One, exporting data. Two, updating data in multiple CRMs. Chris, why would you have multiple CRMs? Well, if you're on the Zillow Flex program, if you're on OpCity, if you're on UpNest, if you're on any of these referral-based programs, they want you to keep the data in their database, their CRM. So you now go, well, shit, now I got to update my own Follow Up Boss, my own Boomtown, my own KV Core, and I got to update that one and that one and that one. So sometimes you're juggling 5-6 databases. That's the nature of an agent now. So don't be afraid to look for a VA or an admin. If you want to employ someone here, an admin, that's going to literally just manually move data over. Because I can tell you, to have an agent on a team update a CRM, if you can do that regularly, high five to you. If you can get them to update 5 CRMs, then you need to show me something, because that's just not realistic. That's where you as a team leader or as a broker, you need to employ systems like a virtual assistant or something that's going to old school, copy and paste, move it over, when there's an activity. And I saw some of the top teams doing it. And it's unfortunate that in the era of technology in 2021, we're still doing that, but that's a great way to get your data out, or at least keep up with the current systems, even though that's not really the topic of today. That's just a little side tip.
And I'm going to throw a note in here, because there is one piece of my experience that is unique among the three of us, which is running call centers, and not just at small ones, but at scale. And I mean hundreds or thousands of agents. So here's what I've always found, because because the larger you get as a call center, the more you're counting on the fact that whatever your core training methodology is and your operational directive is, how much data are your people making inside the system? What kind of notes are they taking? The bottom line, like where are they inputting them? What kind of notes are they taking? And I can tell you, as a guy who prides himself on training and talking to hundreds of people and really motivating them to do this kind of work, at most you're oftentimes dealing with 30 or 40%. It might be entering data, and of that 30 or 40%, only 10% are doing it the way that you really want. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, and Chris is nodding, so he obviously agrees. So what is it? Why am I bringing this up? Well, the value of your database and all these conversations we're having is going to be directly related to how responsive is your team and what kind of notes are they putting into the data. You also have to understand that for you as a business owner, the data is going to have a different value than the team. And it's not in their best interest to leave all the best notes at times, because if they know that you as the business owner might take their notes, as Jonathan mentioned at the very early part of our podcast, like let's say you're somebody with AXP, you're using all their stuff, and now you want to they own that data. So for them, it makes a lot of sense to hire a VA, especially if you've been a good note taker. And then they want to export that data over to another agent. I can tell you, as a guy that uses CRMs, if I just get a name and a number, I'm going to treat it like a cold call, full stop. Okay. It doesn't matter that somebody says, hey, this is a previous client. I'm the guy on the phone. I'm treating it like a cold call. If I see a whole bunch of notes from another agent that says wife and husband may get divorced, the sale of the home is on pause, or the buying of the home is on pause, these are incredibly relevant notes that you have to read when you walk into a relationship new with somebody. This is kind of where importing and exporting data becomes critical, because you have 10,000 of these, right? And you can't, if you call from your brokerage and you ignore the fact that the home essentially has been broken, how much of an idiot will you sound like when you call and say, hey, you're ready to sell that home? And then you're going to get it's possible you'll get your ass handed back to you, and you absolutely lost the relationship. Even if the other person is polite and kind, you probably lost the relationship, right? Would you agree, Chris? Would you agree, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony, but it's very similar to the discussion we had in the podcast with Chris, is they just got to understand what you're getting involved with. There's always been an active strain between broker and agent, but it's no different with any business relationships. There's always give and take and strain. Your broker can't give you all these fantastic tools free of charge. There's a reason why they're giving you all these free tools. They're giving you because if you use those free tools, it's explicitly in the agreement that they will have that full control and access of the data that you put into that tool, as long as you're happy with that. But most agents, it becomes and most agents will move. It's just a fact. When they learn the reality, they only learn the reality when they move and they come across what you've just outlined, isn't it?
I gotta throw something in here, John, because you're being really kind, and I don't think you realize it. So a vast majority of brokers, especially larger ones, actually charge their agents. And you've been saying free tools. Okay, I know right now, today, I know a number of EXP guys and other people that are charging their individual agents a minimum of $85 to access the tool. And I know many teams that have moved that fee. The highest I've heard for a basic toolkit is $285 charged to the agent, not to the brokerage. They're covering the full cost of running the platform through their agents. I just want to point that out. Okay. So
it's great. Yeah, it's great news for Mel, right?
Yeah. Or it's baked into your split. You know, a lot of times it's baked in. Oh, well, we don't, my team doesn't charge, you know, monthly fees or transaction fees. Well, what's your split? You know, they're making that money back some way, but that's the trade-off of turnkey solutions, right? You know, people join a team because they need experience, they need education, they need accountability, and they don't have the upfront money necessarily to front those things. So, you know, there's always going to be that trade-off. Nothing's free. You're paying one way or another. You just need to find out, is what you're getting back out of it worth what you're paying? And when it stops being that way, then it's probably time to make a move.
Right.
I'm not even telling agents they shouldn't utilize some of them. I'm just saying, when you get to a certain stage, you should really be looking at hiring, having also your own systems and hiring somebody like what Chris has said to help you. Because also, if you if you're not a real top producer and you join a brokerage and you flat out refuse to use any of their tools and that, they're not going to be that particularly happy with you. Your response isn't, if you have that position, isn't going to be warm and comforting from most of the brokerages that you're trying to work with. So it's better to duplicate it and but you still have direct access and control of that data, and maybe be slightly, I'm trying to struggle for the right words, be selective about what the data you put into the brokerage CRM.
Mm-hmm.
I think, guys, I'm going to take this one step further. So we're talking a lot about data ownership, and Chris brought up a great point. John brought up a great point. Listen, if you have a strong team and you're brand new into your career, and that team is going to teach you and train you how to do real estate, they're going to show you how to manage the transaction, they're going to give you access to the tools. Somebody on the team is going to teach you how to use the tools. To me personally, I'm going to say that is worth a huge amount of money. And if at the end of the day, you look at your split and you're going, oh, I'm only taking home 50% of my commission. Well, I'm sorry, you're getting paid to be trained on the job. And that, what value, I would say it would be even worth as much as 70 to 80% of your split, because you're getting on the job training from people that know what they're doing. If you're being sent out into the wild and nobody's handing you anything, no tools, no training, no videos, and you're doing all the work and all the research yourself, and still at the end of the day, you're giving, and then the people that you're selling to, your own sphere, your mother, your brother, your aunt, your uncle, and your 70% or 80% of your commission is being taken away, that is a bad deal, my friend. Go find yourself another real estate team, okay, in my opinion. In terms of when should you start to look at data ownership and mechanisms like that, I think that in the first few years of your career, I don't know that I feel like this is going to be the top priority unless you're already making over $100,000 a year. Like if you're just a rock star, you're an experienced salesperson or an experienced entrepreneur, and you come in and blow the doors off the real estate industry because you've been in business for a while, I think that you probably already have data ownership on your radar, and that this is not going to be a surprise to you. What's going to be helpful to you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I totally, and this is the reason why when you go to the MailRight website, we don't push this discussion at all, because we don't honestly. We just push that we provide these tools, Robert, and also we use the power of Facebook to get leads into the system, and that's what we concentrate on. We don't really push this conversation as part of our marketing, because if it's brought up, we will describe our position quite clearly, but we don't push it because we don't think for what our tool provides the best value, that particular audience is not particularly interested in that particular discussion, even though we have a very open data transference position, which other players have decided they're not going to have, which is fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to touch on, sorry to cut you off. I wanted to just touch on a couple points you just made, Robert, because I know we're running low on time, but this is a different discussion than data, ownership, but the whole team mentality, and especially, if we're talking to you agents out there, listeners that are 1, 2, 3 years into the business, right? Or you're getting ready to start into the business. I'm a wholehearted believer in joining a team. Why? Because you're going to get more experience. You're going to get more transactions under your belt. You're going to get in front of way more clients than you ever will on your own. I mean, unless you just have some natural God-given talent, I don't know. But even then, you also have to have a lot of money to front run this thing. The way your team is able to get you in front of, I don't know, 30 clients a month is because they're spending thousands of dollars on leads, right? Trust me, I saw the bills at our big team that we had, and we were spending buku bucks hand over fist, right? To get you in front, because on any team, the national statistics, if you're closing 5%, that's great. I mean, if you're closing 8 to 10%, you're freaking top in the nation, right? Top in the world, probably. So you got to think, okay, 5, that means I'm only closing 5 deals out of 100, maybe. Right? That means you spent all that money on those hundreds. So my point being, one, look at what you're getting in return on that team. Are they giving you education and training and leads and accountability? And then you got to look to yourself, am I open to accountability? Am I okay with someone calling me out on my shit when I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do? That's what's going to make you better. 2, when you start to think about going on your own, maybe after a year and a half, 2 years, I think, a year to 2 years is the right amount of time to be on a team, unless that team offers some longevity plans, right? They're not a churn and burn team. They want to keep you on there. They offer you incentives for being a veteran, right? That's what I'm taking into account on my own team that I'm building is I want people, if they want to make a career out of being on my team, I'm going to offer them increasing incentives to do so. But when you do start thinking about going on your own, that's when I think the topic of today's podcast comes really, really important, which is that take your time while you're with that team to then go, okay, is the CRM we use on this team the one I want to keep using when I go out on my own? Does it restrict the data? Take the time to find out, okay, when you go out, don't just get the cheapest thing because you're like, oh, I'm going out on a budget. I've talked to tons of agents that are out there trying to start on their own, and they're trying to just skip by like, oh, my brokerage gives me this for free and that. And that's cool and all, but you also have to think 3 steps ahead, which is what's going to happen when I outgrow that system and then I want to move to a better one because now I have the money. It might be worth you spending a little bit more time investigating and a little more money up front so that way you're not pigeonholed in when it comes time for you to really
actually. My position is slightly different to yours, Chris. If I was starting off, unless I was joining a really hardcore team like what you're trying to build, and there's 2 players in Northern Nevada that have really similar models that you're trying to build, and the agents do get really strong value by being part of that team. But the big dominant players are either national franchise or there's 2 regional large brokerages that dominate Northern Nevada, and they provide no value to their agents at all, none at zero. In real terms, I'm not going to name them, but they really their model is a very old-fashioned but profitable model, and they dominate the market. If I was an agent, unless I was joining a real power team that you would build, I would want to keep as much control of my data as possible from day one. I'm the one that's building those bloody relationships. I'm the one that's ringing up these bloody people. I'm the one that's sending them birthday cards, whatever, to build. I'm the one that's chasing around town, handing out. I'm the one that's doing all. It's my grunt work. It's my bloody data, for as I'm concerned, and I would want to keep it as close to me as possible, unless I was joining a real power team. And that's part of the deal. And, if it's a real power team and they're really giving me really quality leads, which are really actionable, unless I'm joining that type of organization, I would want to keep the data as close to me as possible.
I'm going to say one thing, and then I think we should wrap up here, guys. But I feel obliged to throw in. So for the 14 years that I've been in the real estate marketing industry, this place where I started 14 years ago, I have only signed on with other agencies as a contractor, never as an employee. I've always kept my calls and such going out on my tools, not on theirs, or at a minimum, I backed up, because oftentimes I've been working in places that have Salesforce and other types of CRMs. And I would always make sure that I was recording the data on my own tools and making sure, because the relationships were mine. The business was the agencies, absolutely. And I don't mix those things up. I never crossed the line and tried to solicit two separate companies to the same client. But the client relationship, like this would be like saying, because I put Chris's data into HubSpot, somebody else owned the data. Well, maybe they own the phone number, but I own my relationship with you, Jonathan, and I own my relationship with you, Chris. I've built that. That's my relationship. If I happen to have your phone number in my phone, that shouldn't be a big deal. I own the relationship with all of my clients. It's how I started Inbound REM, is through a single email that I sent. And I acquired my first 10 or 15 customers that way, because I had such a powerful relationship with them. And all that email said was, I'm leaving this agency and I'm doing my own thing. That's it. That's all it said.
I just we want to obviously end this, but I also want to not come across as too anti-brokerage, because on the flip side of this is the brokerage position, a really good brokerage that really provides real good tools, really provides quality leads, and really provides good mentorship and training. What they find with a lot of agents is what you find with a lot of successful franchise, is that after a couple of years, the franchisee forget about all the training that they were given. They forget about all the processes that were provided. And then they just look at the franchise fee and think to themselves, why am I paying this master franchise this bloody fee? I can do all this myself. Well, they forget that all the hundreds of hours of training in the manuals, in the building the processes that went in to make sure that franchisee was successful. But it's just part of the human nature that you forget that when you're 2 to 3 years in, and you think to yourself, well, I don't have to give this brokerage a cut anymore. I can keep it all myself. But on the other hand, as a brokerage, you've got to be realistic. You've got to offer a pathway and understand the journey of the agent and where they're going to be mentally. Otherwise, they are going to jump ship.
Yeah.
So it's, right?
I agree wholeheartedly.
This data control issue and everything else, I think that, listen, Chris, one of the reasons I've asked you to come on the show, and John has agreed with me. I think if I was getting into real estate, even right now, if I got a real estate license, I'd either offer you a partnership where I traded, my SEO skill set with you, but I'd absolutely 100% leverage your deep knowledge of CRMs and real estate data management. And I would do so in such a way that I would give you revenue. I would happily pay you for that experience. And if I was a brand new agent, I know for me, you would be a dream leader, a dream mentor, because I would know and understand that there was so much value being built into. There's no way for us to explain to the audience in one go how many hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours that you spend optimizing action plans, building email marketing systems. How much time do you personally take of your time trying to follow guys like me who may have an expert in one little thing that you're researching for your business, so that you can then optimize that process or optimize that thing and get a 3 or 4% better result, whatever the small number is, but better. If you as an agent are connected to somebody like that, there's no putting a value on that. So a team or a big brokerage, if they were doing any of these things, it would be wildly valuable. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people adrift in a sea of information with nobody steering the ship. That's the truth. That's why we're having the conversation, because we've all gotten those calls from those frustrated agents. Chris, you've met them. And I'm sure even in your own office, because somebody wasn't being given the kind of stewardship that they needed as a human, that even in your own environment, there were people that felt like they were lost or adrift. And so anyway, I think we've done good ground on this, guys. And I really love this show. I don't know that our audience will love this show, but I love this show. It needs to be said in this industry, I think. And thank you.
It's tricky. There is no black and white, just a lot of grey here. It's just a tricky situation. People always want to find the 100% answer, but it really depends what kind of agent you are. Do you want to take on all this data stuff? Or you bet, but also the brokerage also tend not to understand the mentality of the agent. So, but there's just a lot of grey. But as long as you understand the fundamental rules of the game, you won't be so lost. And I think that's what we've tried to provide in this episode, isn't it, Robert and Chris?
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Right. I think that's a good time to wrap it up. We'll see you next week with another discussion. We won't have Chris, but hopefully he'll come back. We've got another past guest. We've got our female doctor, coming back. And hopefully Chris will join us in the coming months. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Ready, y'all.